Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Belmer, and I'm the Milwaukee Art Museum's Director of Membership. And first, I just wanted to ask, can everyone hear me okay? I was sort of having some volume issues, but okay. I'm Rachel Belmer. I'm the Milwaukee Art Museum's Director of Membership, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to today's virtual member orientation, which we planned in celebration of Member Month, which is May at the Art Museum. Whether you're a new member or a longtime member, today's program was really designed to give you sort of a unique look at your museum with a little history, and then of course, a review of your member benefits. So I thought I would just, before I turn things over, I would just share a little bit of a rundown of today's program. So first you'll be hearing from Amy Kershke. Amy is the museum's Director of Adult, Docent, and School Programs. Amy will be sharing a bit of the museum's history with us and some architectural highlights. And then she'll also share some highlights from our collection that you can watch out for on your next visit. When Elizabeth, Amy, and I were sort of dreaming up what this presentation could be, we thought it'd be sort of fun if by the end of this presentation, you could give a little tour of your own to a friend or family member. So I hope that we accomplish that today. And then after Amy, Elizabeth Gasparka, who's the museum's development officer for membership, will be sharing a bit about our upcoming exhibition, Americans in Spain, Painting and Travel, 1820 through 1920. And then she'll also be sharing some special member opportunities we have planned around that. And Elizabeth will also do a quick review of some of our member benefits and things that we wanted to make sure you knew about. And then finally, we will save some time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation. We will use the chat feature. So if you think of anything as Amy's presenting or Elizabeth's presenting, feel free to put that in the chat, and then we'll dive into those at the end. And then finally today, before we really get the program started, I first and foremost wanted to say a big thank you on behalf of our entire museum team. As I said, May is Member Month, and I cannot overstate just how full our hearts are of gratitude and thanks for our members. This year has been challenging for so many, and we have been so heartened and inspired by the continued support of our members. Your support has allowed the museum to pivot and adapt to the challenges of this past year and remain an important resource for so many in our community and beyond. And we have so much important work ahead through our strategic direction to better serve the diverse populations in our community. And as members, you are helping support that work and are ensuring the museum can not only be a place for you to enjoy, but a place that continues to have a lasting positive impact in our community and region for generations to come. And we feel your support in that, and we really thank you. So with that, I'm really excited and pleased to turn things over to my colleague, Amy.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And I want to echo a really warm and heartfelt thank you that Rachel shared as well. Really, your support means everything right now. And I think we really feel that sense of community and shared mission with your continued participation in programs like this. So I hope you're not hearing a funny background noise. If you saw me roll my eyes earlier, they suddenly decided to do some construction overhead. It's been quiet all morning, but hopefully it won't be too disruptive. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And get us started. Okay, so as Rachel mentioned, we're going to use the chat box, and so feel free to put in questions. I think we'll sort of save questions for the end, but it's great if, as you think of them, you put them in there, and so we're sure not to miss any of your what you're wondering about. So as Rachel mentioned, we're going to do a little sort of mini tour. This is what I love to do in person, and on a gorgeous day like today, I'm just so sorry we can't be in the building together because the building looks stunning, and it looks especially good in the sunshine. So we'll just do a little bit of a virtual tour, a little bit of history, and some collection highlights. So as members, you may well know that we have over 30,000 objects in the museum collection. And so what on earth would we choose as highlights? I decided to go back to just a little over a year ago when, which seems like a lifetime ago, we were planning for the DNC convention to come last summer. And in preparation with the docents, we were talking about being at the ready to give a short 20, maybe 30-minute tour of the museum to many first-time visitors, many out-of-town guests. So to prepare, what we decided to do was to just take a poll of all of our docents. We have about 150 active docents, and say, okay, if you're showing someone the Milwaukee Art Museum for the first time, what are your like top 5 or top 10 favorites? And from that, we compiled all the results and shared with the group. And then a week later, we shut down for the pandemic. But I still had that list, and I thought it'd be fun to dust it off and use the top 5 works as the highlights. So we'll go through a little architecture, and then those top 5 highlights. Many will be familiar to you, but I hope to infuse some history and some fun little tidbits so that you can, next time you come, take your family or your friends around, as we're starting to welcome back out-of-town guests again this summer. Yay. Okay, so here we go. So here's the campus. It's great. In fact, I was thinking about that this morning. An advantage to virtual tours is we can get this sort of aerial view. When we're standing in the building, it's sometimes hard to sort of take in the whole campus. So here's the Milwaukee Art Museum campus on the shore of Lake Michigan. And it really shows the many decades of buildings that have come to be. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But we get our bearings with the Calatrava building. That is probably what we're most known for in terms of architecture and architectural history. And then it connects to these other buildings from the 1950s and the 1970s that we'll talk about. So architecture. We are this year celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Quadrati Pavilion, designed by Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava. Hard to believe it's been 20 years. I feel like the building still feels incredibly avant-garde and innovative and fresh. And of course, while we've been closed, there's been opportunity to do a number of projects to really refresh the space. So if you haven't been yet, I hope when you walk in, your jaw will drop because it is quite stunning right now. So this is the building we're sort of going to focus on a little bit more today, but it's really the pinnacle of a long history of the art museum. So we think of the art museum dating to 1888 with the founding of the Leighton Art Gallery. And I show here on the left an image of the building, and it was designed by architect George Ashdown Audsley. And on the right, an interior view of the gallery. So in the center on the far wall in the gallery view, you can see a portrait of Frederick Leighton, who's really the person responsible for founding this initial art gallery and gifting not only his own collection, but also encouraging future gifts from the community to really establish a place for the public to come and view art. So Frederick Leighton was a meat packer, and there's a lot of great stories about how this came to be. There was a dinner party, and he supposedly talked about considering starting an art gallery, and it was in the paper the next morning that he had promised an art gallery. So, and he went on to go back to his native England on a trip, and which he did often during his time in Milwaukee, and ran into the brother of this architect, and they sort of started to create plans right away. So it's really an auspicious beginning. So at the time, Mr. Leighton and others that contributed works were really collecting contemporary art. We always have to remind ourselves that we have a contemporary art collection from 1888. So it's largely European American works in the initial collection. So we're going to really jump forward in time because I know we're sort of doing an abbreviated tour. I should have mentioned, this was located at Mason and Jefferson. So what is across the street from what was formerly now Watts Tea Room? We have to have another reference, but sort of kitty corner from the Pfister. It's now a parking structure. Good news, the museum went on to come to the lakefront. So in the 1950s, there was an effort to bring the museum to the lakefront. It's not called that yet, and to combine it with a war memorial. So War Memorial and Art Center to be on the lakefront. So I show some vintage views here of what was where I'm sitting today prior to the building or the campus being developed. It was really sort of this esplanade, a little promenade jutting out from Wisconsin Avenue and from Mason Street. So you can see what the site looked like earlier in the last century. And what was built was what we now know as the War Memorial Center. It was opened in 1957, designed by Finnish architect Eero Saarinen. And I love that we have a little sketch on the left of the concept of this building, and then an image of what it originally looked like on the right. This is 1957 in Milwaukee, and just look how cutting edge this architecture is. It's really, when I walk into work, we come through this building and I sit in this building, that this impossibility of these cantilevered large block elements on these impossibly razor thin pillars that come down to just a knife edge. It's really extraordinary. So don't forget to check out this building as well when you next visit. It also has such a unique sculptural quality as you see it sort of on this grassy hill. That has changed a lot with what had to be built around it, but it's nice to go back to this original photograph. It was not always appreciated when it first opened. There was some criticism in the newspaper at the time. Some people embraced this forward-thinking building, and others called it the air conditioner on the lake. So kudos to Milwaukee for being on board with really pushing boundaries and embracing this architect who we know now from the TWA terminal in New York, as well as the St. Louis Arch, as Finnish-American architect. So this is also an architectural gem. Here is another view of it. Really beautiful. So that's in the 1950s. We've come to the lakefront, and the War Memorial really sits sort of on the above ground or elevated part, and the art center is in this base. So really the early galleries that you still walk through today are in this granite wrapped base. So by the 1970s, we need more room. This is very common in museum histories to need to continually expand. So you may well know this figure, Mrs. Harry Lynd Bradley, or Peg Bradley. She was a wonderful collector of modern art, also American and European. So another artist collecting of her time, and wanted to gift the collection to the museum, to the city of Milwaukee. And we didn't have room for it. She then made a commitment to not only gifting the collection, but to building an extension. So there was room to house the collection. So I just showed these two images from the archives on the left. Mrs. Bradley in action, helping to install the collection in the newly designed wing, and also on the right being interviewed with some of her wonderful Georgia O'Keeffe works. So this is the building that gets built by David Kaler and architects, 1975. If you ever want to remember the trick, it's an inverse number. So Saarinen is 57 and Kaler is 75. I need a lot of help with dates, so I'm really glad that that happens to work, that little trick. So here you can see, so the original Saarinen building, that elevated War Memorial Center by Saarinen, is now sort of wrapped, anchored with this really a concrete plinth. This is a very subtle building, and it is necessarily windowless for the most part, because this is where the collection lives. Most artwork is sensitive to light, so to have it on display, you need to not have so many windows. It had an east entrance onto the lake, as you see here, and then this open sculpture court originally. So it really changes the overall effect of the original building, but it's such a necessary step, and it will be integral to when Calatrava comes along a couple decades from now. So just as a reminder, when you are in the museum and you're in the galleries, for the most part, you're almost always in the Kaler edition, with the European galleries still being in the Saarinen, the older galleries. And I'll show a floor plan at the end to sort of break that down. So here we get to the 1990s. There was a need to expand again, and there was a competition for architects, now really globally looking at different talent. And Santiago Calatrava was ultimately selected to design the addition, which opened in 2001. And like Saarinen, we start with a sketch. So you have the watercolor sketches on the left, and then you have the building as we know and love it today on the right. So Calatrava is an architect, an engineer, and an artist. And those three things really come together in this building so beautifully. It's his first building in the United States. He was largely known for bridges. And this became, in some ways, the fruition of his thesis, his dissertation, I should say, that he originally wrote called The Foldability of, let me just double check this, The Foldability of Space Frames. So he's exploring ideas of how buildings can move, fold, and sort of have this transformative quality. He went through several iterations of the building, actually, where other parts moved, but we know today of the wings being the movable part. He said, I love drawing and painting and sculpture. I also love the rigor of mathematics. My decision was to stay in between. So this is one of these sort of nerdy chic buildings, right? It's got an incredible sculptural quality, but it's expert engineering that makes it work, and we marvel at it. So here's an aerial view of when it's still under construction, and you can see how there is the connection to the original buildings. Note there's this long, we know these as the gallerias, but this long low part of the building that sort of, it connects necessarily to the original buildings, but it gives some distance so that when you have this sort of really ta-da sculptural moment at the south end, it has some space away from those larger block buildings. Calatrava also said, rather than just to add something to the existing buildings, I wanted to add something to the lakefront. I've therefore worked to infuse the building with a certain sensitivity to the culture of the lake, the boats, the sails, and the always changing landscape. And I think so much, again, with this aerial view, we can appreciate how it is, just has a beautiful relationship to the lake, somewhat organic, somewhat built in its gestalt, and it connects to the city through this pedestrian bridge and this long mast. So we have a wonderful connection to the city, but also to the lake. It really sits perched on the shore. So I'm going to play this and talk a little bit about the wings. So the wings are sort of really what we celebrate a lot with this building, and we see people lined up on the bridge watching them open and close every day. This is sped up a little bit, and it takes a number of minutes, it takes a number of minutes in both to open and close. So there's 72 steel fins that make up the wings. They are stick straight, but notice how soft this looks, how organic it looks. So really echoing a bird unfurling its wings. It is called the Burke Brise Soleil being sunshade. So it has a practical function of being able to shade parts of the building. It can be stopped at any angle. But really, it's more symbolic that the museum is open and welcoming visitors. When it's closed, you probably notice the building is quite low, and Calatrava was very intentional to keep the building low on the lakefront. He didn't want to obstruct the view of the natural beauty of the campus. So that's just a quick view of the wings. I know you've seen it before, and hopefully we'll enjoy it many more times this summer with guests. We have on the sensors, we have sensors on the wings. If the wind gusts are 23 miles per hour or higher, they will not open. So that's not our choice. That's the technology that determines that. And I've stood on many a tour with architects visiting from another country who are only here for one day, and the winds are too gusty, and that is a frustrating moment. But the great thing about living in Milwaukee is you can come often. Static electricity in the air sometimes also has an impact. So when you enter the building, I wanted to point out a couple of things. When you think about the design, Calatrava looks to nature, as he talks about both being a sculptor and also interested in mathematics. There's an incredible amount of rhythm. He uses white to reflect light, seasons. The building is very different times of day, different times of year, and it really becomes this, has a life of its own in so many ways. When you walk in, the ceiling is a little lower. So we see on the left with the Mobile by Alexander Calder, a slightly lower ceiling. It's still a very grand space, but that helps sort of get you comfortable. It's a little bit more human scale. And then notice the framing in the prow or the tip of the hall here, Windover Hall, that you are drawn towards. It's like an eyelid almost, or a half open eye. So the ring beam, that's really one of the main structural elements of the building, helps break up what could otherwise be an overwhelming space. It's 90 feet high in the prow of this sort of ceiling to floor to ceiling glass. So that gives it this really welcoming pull towards the view out to the lake. It frames it and it draws you in. The floor is all Carrara marble, so it has this beautiful veining, but it also allows for all that light to reflect. And on a sunny day like today, it looks like the lake extends into the building. In fact, if you've not ever done it before, I'd recommend when you're walking towards the building on Wisconsin Avenue, just notice how far out you can actually see through the building. You can, if you go back to Wisconsin Avenue and you're coming towards it, you can actually see all the way through the building. So all these sightlines are so intentional with his stunning design. It's called Windover Hall because the largest donor family to the project was the Quadracci family, and it was Harry Quadracci's favorite poem, The Windover. And it talks about a bird sort of hovering in the air. The poem is by Gerard Manley Hopkins. So that's Windover Hall. Here's another view since the floors have been refinished. They were refinished when we first closed, and it really does shimmer. It's a great place for kids to run too, and now that we've been cooped up for a year. And just notice the light and the reflection. So just a couple other things. I talked about his interest in the movability, the foldability of buildings, and we know the wings do just that, but he also gives the illusion of it in other areas. So on the left, you see the gallerias and this large bolt of a, that has no function. It's just a visual suggestion that maybe the building could continue to move, that it has more moving parts. On the right, we have our Baker Rowland galleries, which will soon welcome a new exhibition that you're going to hear more about. And that's a big deal. It's the first time and still our only space that we have column free for galleries, for exhibitions. So these interior walls are all movable and you can have any number of configurations. And if you've been a member a long time, you know how different the exhibitions look in the design of them because this space allows for so much freedom in the architecture. And another trick, when we're here in person, I always like to take people down to the garage. Not only has it been voted one of the best garages in the world numerous times, there's a little fun trick. If you go along the perimeter on either side, either the lake side or the city side, and look up, there are skylights. And even though you're below ground and below water, it's a periscope effect. So you actually see up and out. The windows are created by Calatrava in a way that you have this delightful periscope illusion. So you can see the city on one side and the lake on the other. So that's a fun trick for your visitors. The building, of course, has given us international recognition and also brought in some fun things. Who knew? I've been here long enough to see American Idol come not just once, but twice. And we were used in the Transformers movie. We've been used for commercials. We make appearances in other things. And this is a great way to add visibility to the museum, but also to bring in, of course, revenue. And then I like to always show the Visit Milwaukee logo and how much we feel a sense of responsibility that the building is seen as a symbol of Milwaukee in a lot of ways. And so how do we deliver on not just a great museum, but a great city? And if you haven't had a chance yet, you know, it took many, many years to build, but when you go to New York City, you can now at the World Trade Center site see Calatrava's newest building at the PATH station. And they came to visit the Calatrava here in preparation for designing this building. So there's some similarities to it. It's so different to see it sort of landlocked in the middle of these high rises, unlike ours that I feel is so much almost hovering on the water. It doesn't move, but it still has its incredibly beautiful space. So check that out when you hopefully can next visit New York. All right, I'm already going way longer than I had thought on architecture. There's too much good stuff. So the East End, I want to mention because it's such an important addition. In 2014, 2015, HDA Architects designed this wrap. Really, it's just a little wrap around the East End. And if you think back to the Kaler building, that entrance had once been active, it had long been shut down, and we needed to have more of an environmentally controlled space. And ultimately, this beautiful addition is giving us what the architect Shields called living room for all of us, a living room on the lake, right? So we can all come and sit on the lake. We can't all afford lakefront property, but we can come and enjoy a wonderful lakefront living room, lakeside living room. This space is open now, so people from the lake path can come in. It isn't quite open yet. It will be opening in soon in the future phases of opening. So now we still all come through the main entrance for safety reasons, but you can enter this space from inside the galleries. And when we're reopened for access, of course, people can come in and enjoy a cup of coffee, use the restrooms. You don't even need to pay admission. So I love that sort of sense of a community connection. In the upper right, you also can see that for the first time, you can view the Calatrava building from inside the museum, which is really awesome. If you lead a lot of tour groups and it's freezing cold outside, no one wants to go back outside to watch the wings open and close. So it's great to have this cozy gallery with a stunning view to watch the full mechanism of the building. So here I just circle back to the campus view again, and on the right, I appreciate when we walk around together, I often point out where the original Siren building is versus the Kaler building versus the East End. So if you can see here on the bottom left of the floor plan, below that thick black wall, that's the original Siren building. So very little gallery space. It's where the older European collection lives. And then everything east of that, so from there up, is the Kaler addition, the biggest block of that. So that's why we needed that addition in the 70s to hold much more gallery space to have the collection out on view. And then this little slice of the East End, which is on the lake there. And then you can see in proportion to the building of the Calatrava. So that just gives you some spatial connection. So now we'll go into the galleries for a few collection highlights. And I like to remind people that that edition in 2015 was actually a lot about interior work. We have this wonderful East End added, but really the interior work to the galleries was essential. We had this horrible, and now when I look back at these pictures, I cannot believe how heavy and visually oppressive that ceiling in the upper left is. We had this open grid ceiling for our lighting system, and it just really took away from the experience of being in the galleries. So on the lower right, you see the new refreshed galleries, that closed ceiling, the floors were refinished and lightened, the walls were lightened, and it just now helps the collection really shine. We've always had an internationally renowned collection, but I feel like this project helped us deliver on the promise of the building. The architecture was so stunning, we needed to have the inside match the outside, and now that is very much the case. So collection highlights. As I said, when you come to the museum, there's so much to see. We have 30,000 objects in the collection and a couple thousand out on view at any one time. So what on earth would you show as highlights? Everyone has their personal favorites, I hope, but I'm going to show you the top 5 highlights, courtesy of the Milwaukee Art Museum docents. So number 5, Cornelia Parker's Edge of England. This is an older gallery shot. This is still our official photography. And again, you can appreciate that annoying ceiling. And here you see it it was in a corner. You couldn't go behind it. So I want to show the before installation. But this work from 1999 has always been a visitor favorite. And I wasn't surprised when it made the top 5. I would say since the pandemic, for me personally, I find it even more moving as a work. She's an English artist who really looks at destruction and metamorphosis. She looks at materials that have been destroyed or altered, and they seem beyond recovery or beyond transformation, and then she transforms them. And so I find this really powerful now. This particular work is from chalk fragments from the cliffs of Dover in England that she collected after a rock fall, and sort of resurrected them with this suspension by wire. And so it's this massive piece. As you know, when you visit it, when you stand in front of it, it just takes up your entire field of vision. It's like a wall of these rocks. And I include a quote from her about resurrecting things that maybe have a violent history, but then she creates this frozen moment. Now, the cliffs of Dover have an incredible symbolic meaning in England. They're the first bit of the country you see when you come across the channel. And I know from my own grandfather, when he was a navigator in World War II, he talked about when he made it safely back on bombing runs, that was such a sign of safety and of home. And so I know that there's songs about it. It really lives large in English sort of pride. It also, the place where she collected these rocks, or these chalk fragments, is infamous for suicide attempts, or suicides, I should say. And it really, so it holds both tragedy and hope. And I think that work, the way she gives it to us to just sort of reflect on that and have our own meaning that we bring to it is really powerful. I show you another couple of views in the current installation. And one thing I love now is ever since we hung it in 2015, you've been able to walk around it for the first time, which is really great. So you can look through it and back out at other parts of the galleries. You are actually forced to walk around it right now in the one-way path. And I also wanted to mention that over here on the left of the picture on the left in the floor, you can see a little bit of a metal panel in the floor. And that's where Robert Gober's untitled work normally sits, that we know as the suitcase. So I wanted to give a shout out for the next member art break on May 26th, 2 weeks from today, when conservators Terry White and Rick Knight will talk about what that work, what's been happening to it and what's happening behind the scenes. It's very exciting. So be sure to come back for that. Number 4, I feel like I should have a drum roll audio clip. Number 4 is Francisco de Zurbarán, our Spanish Baroque painting of St. Francis of Assisi in his tomb. So this work has been in the collection since the 1950s. And Zurbarán was really known for painting these monastic portraits, especially known for painting St. Francis. Painting him in a humble way, dramatically lit with these sort of simple dark background. Quietly evokes sort of the idea of monastic solitude and contemplation. This particular painting was inspired by a legend popular in the 17th century of Pope Nicholas V visiting a burial crypt in the Church of Assisi and recounting that he saw St. Francis's body appear fully whole and alive, holding a skull in contemplation. So it's a very well-known legend, and Zurbarán depicts it here. So you sort of have this flickering torchlight, these deep shadows that make it incredibly evocative and mysterious. Some people find it inviting, some people find it a little scary. He's standing, but notice his lower, he's got one foot peeking out, so sort of almost maybe making a move towards us. And it is larger than life size, so it's very powerful, as I said. So this intense contemplation of the skull with his face cast in darkness, you probably really can't pick it up on the slide at all, but he also wears the signs of the stigmata or the wounds of Christ in the Christian tradition. So you'll see small red marks on his feet, his hands, and on his side. So you can look for that when you come to visit. I wanted to share, though, it connects so much to our history. And there was a blog post that my colleague Amanda Brown wrote that's wonderful to go check out about when this came into the collection in the 1950s. So our director at the time, the Milwaukee Art Center director, Edward Dwight, was looking for an old master work, a really stunning painting that could be added with the new building. And so you see the quote here that to find an old, I'm gonna have to move my thing here for a minute, sorry, I knew that was gonna happen. So he says, a year ago, we moved into a monumental new building on the lakefront, but we still have much to accomplish. We need an old master painting of which Milwaukeeans can be proud, something that can serve as a symbol and inspiration to the people. So he knew of this painting that was owned by a Frenchman in Mexico City named Count Philippe Subervier, and he wrote to him and persuaded him to sell it. And so that's how the work came into the collection. And you sort of think of the timing of this work coming in with the Siren building, these big monumental decisions or moments. At the time, this is early Instagram, I feel like. These are the 1950 newspaper articles where people were photographed in front of the work in their own hooded garments. And then on the left, you can see an early installation of the work with its original frame. We've since had, I think it was in the 70s maybe, that we had a new frame, period frame put on it, and it now on the right on this gorgeous red wall. How Far We've Come is a museum in our exhibition display as well, our gallery display. So at the time, there were some people who weren't as thrilled about the purchase of the work. It was in the paper a lot. If you go back to the archives, you can read different newspaper articles. It was purchased, of course, with private funds, but there was a perception that perhaps county money had been used to purchase it, and not everyone agreed on the price or the choice. So people have had opinions even before the internet, but I thought it'd be fun to include the then and now. All right, number 3, Kehinde Wiley. So Kehinde Wiley is more known than ever. And at the time this work was acquired in 2006, it was gifted by the African American Art Alliance. And you can see, and the artist is quite young at the time, and he has portrayed this gentleman in really a historic references, but with a contemporary sitter. And that's central to Kehinde Wiley's work. I include here the references that he makes. So his process, Kehinde Wiley went to Yale Art School, and as he was studying art history, realized how very few representations there were of people of color in the traditional Western art history story. So he started to explore this in his work, and he would just ask everyday people to pose for portraits and then would put them in sculptures, paintings from Western art history. So we see here the sculpture on the right that this references from the Vatican, St. Peter's in Rome, and the William Morris 19th century designer pattern that is used in the background. And in 2018, he really came into the spotlight, the artist, with the painting of Barack Obama's portrait for the National Portrait Gallery. So just a few years ago. And I don't know how many of you caught this. I wanted to be sure to point it out that at the time, once Obama's portrait was unveiled at the National Portrait Gallery, a man by the name of Darnell Jefferson, who works at New York Public Radio, realized that he had been painted by the same artist. So here we had long told the story of this unknown sitter in our painting being approached on the street to be asked to be in the painting, which was sometimes what the artist chose to do. But we learned in this interview that you can find online and listen to that he actually responded to an ad on Craigslist. So we have to revise our story. So Mr. Jefferson responded to an ad on Craigslist. He was a part-time model. He was 24 at the time. And in the interview, he really recounts, the selection of the wardrobe, how hard it was to stand for such a long period. And even though he knew this was going to be in a gallery or in a museum, he didn't quite understand the potential of how big a deal this was. And so he would start to have people come back from trips to Milwaukee and say, I think I saw you in the museum. And so it's a great interview to listen to. And I also want to mention that the portraits, both Michelle Obama's portrait by Amy Sherald and Barack Obama's portrait by Kehinde Wiley, are going on a national tour. And they're not coming to Milwaukee, but they will be in Chicago starting mid-June. So you can visit them if you haven't been to DC. Okay, we're almost there. Number 2, the wood gatherer. I think if I'd had to put money down, I would have bet on this one being in the top 5. It is such a beloved favorite of the Milwaukee Art Museum docents and members. And it is the one thing I'm showing you that's not on view yet. It soon will be because it's on the upper level. So here we have a late French academic painter, and he was really looking to paint country life, country people in a really genuine way. So he was criticizing the sort of what he called the opera comique representation of country life, normally portrayed by artists. And he wanted to focus on life of peasant farmers in his native village. And he looked at this sort of large scale work with intense naturalism and factual rendering of the light and the details of nature. He became the leader of the naturalist school. And you see here depicted his family friend and neighbor and his granddaughter. So there's so many contrasts in this painting that we enjoy. The contrast of age and youth, older age and youth, of labor and play, of the seasons. Is it fall? Is it spring? It's a transitional season, sort of the brown dried leaves in the background, but sort of the greenery and flowers in the front, the carefree nature and sort of the weight of the world on your mind between these two figures. So the wood gatherer, always beloved. And number 1. Number 1 is Beth Lipman. And this is in an old location when it was in the Cudahy Gallery. It's now in a newer location that you can see here. And this is out on view on the main level. And I know it's a docent favorite, so I love that they picked it as the number 1 work they would show out-of-town visitors. So Beth Lipman is not originally from Wisconsin, but has really made her home here. So we consider her now a local artist based in Sheboygan. She had started to look at, she's often thought about food as a metaphor for desire, consumption, or mortality. And in this work, in the early 2000s, she started responding to still life, Dutch still life paintings, and in Brooklyn. And then this work in 2007 was first made for the Rhode Island School of Design. So I just include an image on the right. It's not the exact painting she looked at, but it's one that would be similar, where she's looking at images that originally were meant to at first appear lush and abundant, but on closer inspection, you realize they're actually in a state of decay and decline. And so the sculpture has a similar quality. When you first look at it, it looks like a great party that's just been set, but when you get closer, you realize, oh, the party is ending, the party's over, and there's flowers are wilting, the candles are snuffed, things are broken, there's pieces on the floor, which are meant to be on the floor, despite people trying to pick them up and put them back on the table. So a work you probably know well, and I encourage you to take a closer look. There's also snails crawling all over it, adding to that idea of decay. And one last member favorite, and I've gone way too long, but I wanted to be sure to add this because it is another Milwaukee artist, local artist, Reginald Baylor, with the work On Duty, Not Driving. And this work is almost always out on view, and one you can really look at in many different levels. He's celebrating the moment that he decided to stop driving truck and become a full-time artist. Mr. Baylor's been an artist, I think, his whole life, but this was a moment that he wanted to commit fully to artistic practice. So there's references to his trucking career. You'll see the Peterbilt logo, the Kenworth logo, and the Schneider Truck Company represented in the pumpkin. The idea of coming home, a long-held wish as a driver that he was always longing to be home, so you have the home in the background. And this idea of a celebration, this sort of picnic, lighthearted, fun, joyful, with the hearts. And also the musical references, as he would listen to music so much in the truck. The hood ornament that you see, the swan or the bird in the upper left. But he also starts to explore issues of race in his work. So he has an image here of Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell at the picnic, but he's played with their skin tone, their hair, to sort of wash out or complicate representations of race. He himself is an African-American, and he also adds the idea of possibility and impossibility on the skewers, with the watermelon cubed being possible as something that he had carried in his trucks, and the basketballs being impossible. They can't be used when they're cubed basketballs, but also, referencing stereotypical images that he himself has thought about as an African-American artist. References to Pac-Man, etc. There's so much to find. And the tuba in the background, I hope you'll take a closer look when you're next in. And I hope you will enjoy this work on your latest member mug. So with that, I've gone far longer than intended. We're open. Please come. Please bring your friends and family and show them some of these highlights and show them the building, hopefully with some new little tidbits.
Thank you so much, Amy. Beautiful job as always. Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Gasparka. I'm the Development Officer for Membership here at the Milwaukee Art Museum, coming to you from my mom's living room. And I'm just going to take a few moments to talk about Americans in Spain, which is the next feature exhibition that will be opening for members on June 10th. So thank you so much, Amy. I was about to say next slide, please. So Americans in Spain, I don't know about all of you, but I'm ready for some travel after a year of lockdown. So it will be a wonderful opportunity to at least imaginatively explore and do some traveling through engaging with these works of art. So without further ado, Americans in Spain, Painting and Travel, 1820 to 1920, is the first major exhibition to focus on the influence of Spanish art and culture on American painting. During the 19th century, artists increasingly added Spain to their European tours to study the masterworks in the Prado Museum and to capture the country's scenic charms and customs. The exhibition features artists including Mary Cassatt, William Merritt Chase, Robert Henri, and John Singer Sargent. Also among the highlights are Sargent's famous Carmencita from 1890 from the Musée d'Orsay, a newly discovered painting by Mary Cassatt from a Madrid private collection never before shown in the United States, and Spanish old masters on loan from the Prado Museum that American painters copied. The exhibition's more than 100 paintings, photographs, and prints are presented chronologically and organized to emphasize migration, tourism, and travel in 19th century Spain. Additional themes include the romance and the reality of Old Spain, Spanish old masters and American copyists at the Prado Museum, Spanish architecture, gardens, and landscapes, Spain's Islamic history, and the critical and popular responses to American artists' work from the time. This exhibition is co-organized by the Milwaukee Art Museum and the Chrysler Museum of Art. Next slide, please, Amy. Thank you. And we're so excited to offer up some really special member opportunities in conjunction with this exhibition, which I should mention will be housed in Baker Rowland Galleries. So firstly, we have the on-site member preview day, which will be taking place, as said, on June 10th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tickets will go up for reservation in late May, so do stay tuned for that. We're also offering the opportunity to join us in this medium, in the space of Zoom, for a virtual member preview conversation. Now, this is going to be a conversation between Brandon Rood, the museum's Abert Family Curator of American Art, and Corey Piper, the Brock Curator of American Art at the Chrysler Museum, who was the co-curator of this exhibition. So we certainly hope that many of you will join us for that conversation. And then some newly and excitingly added bonuses for members. We are going to be offering member-only access hours in June in conjunction with the opening of this exhibition. So if you want the opportunity to experience the exhibition without so much of the crowds, this would be a great opportunity to take advantage of. And next slide, please, Amy. And so now, since we just have a few more minutes here, I'm going to kind of breeze through the member benefits and some information about May, which is our member month. And feel free to, add any questions you might have in the chat, and we'll be happy to take a few minutes and perhaps go over by a few minutes to cover all of your questions. So as many of you probably know, members have free museum admission all year long, including to the collection and all of the exhibitions that are on view. Unlike other museums, we don't have special ticketing or special pricing for our feature exhibitions. It's all included in your membership. So we have, of course, if you visited us in the last year, we have moved to encouraging folks to reserving time tickets in advance. And I will come back to that in just a moment and share some information about that might be practical and helpful. So as mentioned, we offer members the opportunity to preview exhibitions before they open to the public and take part in virtual lecture opportunities. As Amy had mentioned, on May 26th, we're going to be having a member art break over Zoom. And if you're not familiar with member art break, it is an event series that we started back in the fall, which sort of draws on the deep expertise of different museum staffers within their specific areas, sharing out projects that they're working on. In this case, conservation of the Robert Gober sculpture. But we've had all kinds of representation from across different areas of the museum. So it's an hour-long sort of lunch art break, and it's an opportunity to engage with other members and museum staff. So we hope many of you will join us for that again on May 26th. Also, a standard offering in our benefits structure is the subscription to the member magazine, which many of you know is now available in a digital format. If you're interested in signing up to receive it just digitally and you'd like to not receive paper versions, you can go to the museum's membership page and actually opt into a digital version only. So you should be receiving those by email from us. If you're not, please contact me after this and I'm happy to get you signed up. Also, you may have noticed in the last year, we started a member-only communication, which we call Member Insights, which is a monthly member email that's designed to deliver exciting updates about the museum, which is very prescient in this year of lots of changes and things evolving very rapidly. So it's been a great lifeline for us to be able to communicate directly to our members. But we also try to make sure to have fun, in-depth features about the museum and sometimes exclusive content as well. So we certainly hope you'll be continuing to engage with your member insights email messages. Next, we have the 20% discount. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, Amy, if you could stay on this slide, that'd be great. So we do have a discount on parking that's available to members through your member cards. And I'll get into that in just a moment. But for those of you who want to brush up, if you haven't visited in a while, we do have a member parking FAQ on our website. So you can actually, I think the fastest way to get to that is to search for it in the upper right-hand corner in the search box. Just type in member parking FAQ and you'll see that as the top search result. Also available to members on an ongoing basis is a 10% discount on museum shopping in the museum store and dining in our dining outlets once those reopen. I will just highlight that we often offer 20% double discounts for members periodically throughout the year. And in the month of May, for the first time ever, we're just having a continuous member double discount day. So though the store is not physically open at the moment, we certainly hope many of you will take advantage of that special deep discount for the rest of the month. And then another aspect of membership that some members are not aware of is our member discount program. So this is a sort of an alliance that we have with businesses throughout the Milwaukee community who show their support for the museum and its programming by offering our card-carrying members special discounts and special perks. Just to name a few of the businesses, they're all listed on our website. There's a special tab under membership if you go to the membership main page that lists all of our current participants. But a few of my favorites just off the cuff would be Ursa, which is a lifestyle boutique located in Bayview. And then also Company Brewing, which has an excellent fish fry. So those are my two neighborhood discount endorsements today. Also with your membership, of course, you have access to reduced rates on classes and camps, which are being held virtually this summer. And then, of course, the opportunity to engage with a specific museum support group. If you have a particular interest in photography or gardening, we have a range of support groups that are sort of actually wonderful communities and ways to get a little bit more involved in the museum. So with that, Amy, if you want to transition to the next slide, that would be great. So I just wanted to highlight, since some of you may just be getting back out there and maybe you haven't visited us in some time, we are encouraging folks to make timed reservations right now. And that can be done through our website, mam.org/visit. You'll be directed to the eTix website, which is our ticketing platform, at which point you'll want to enter your donor ID number in order to link your membership. And your donor ID number, just as a friendly reminder, is located on your card. Thank you so much, Amy, my Vanna White. Located on your member card, but also located at the bottom of your member insights email messages. So do know that you can always check back there if you need that number in a pinch, or if it's during business hours, feel free to give us a call. We're happy to share that with you as well. And next slide, please. Also, you're not seeing double here, but I just wanted to highlight one other aspect that comes up a lot in conversations with members. Folks are uncertain about how to make use of their discount, and that is also accessible through the member card. So as you'll see on the bottom right-hand corner of the back of the card, there is a square, what we call QR code, and that is how you're going to access your 20% discount in both the Calatrava Garage and Museum Center Park. And then Amy, if you want to keep on rolling here, I just want to highlight real briefly some member month opportunities. So for the rest of the month, you are entitled to bring an extra guest with you on each of your visits. So of course, different levels within the membership program have different admission benefits, but every single level of membership is entitled to one additional guest to bring with them throughout the month of May. So for example, if you're an Art Advocate member, you typically are able to have up to 4 adults on each visit. In this case, you can bring an extra guest with you. So have it be a party of 5 if you wish. And that is accessible by adding what's called the member guest ticket type on top of your membership allotment under the member ticket type. So if you have any further questions or if I can provide support, please don't hesitate to reach out to me about that. Something really fun that we started this year is called the Member Scavenger Hunt. And this was a collaboration with Amy and with education. The Member Scavenger Hunt features works that are on view in the collection right now. And it's just a really fun, lighthearted, all ages way to engage with our collection and visit with some old friends. So we hope if you're planning a visit during the month of May that you'll pick one of those up. Those are available at various sites throughout the museum, including the admissions desk. As you're entering the galleries, there's a drop table on the right-hand side, and then also at the Art Pack station, which is active on Saturdays and Sundays. So if you choose to participate, we are doing a drawing for a prize set from the museum store. So be sure to turn in your filled out hunt for a chance to win. And also I should add that that is also linked on our website. If you go to the membership page within mam.org, you'll see a listing of all the member month opportunities, and the scavenger hunt PDF is actually downloadable from that list. I will also note that we are celebrating the glorious return of visitors still. It hasn't lost its luster yet. And we are welcoming members back with the opportunity to renew on site with us and receive a very fun, colorful member tote bag. Perfect timing with the 20th anniversary of the Calatrava. I don't know if you noted, but that was built in 2001. So we have a beautiful sort of orange-red tote bag that was designed by museum designer Alison Kleiman. That is a playful abstraction of the wings, so to speak. And that's available if you renew on site with us or if you purchase a gift membership for someone. Also, as mentioned, we do have that double discount in the museum store. And the store is being gracious and offering the opportunity to receive curbside pickup if you make special arrangements with them. So just wanted to add that real quick. And Amy, if you want to move on, that's ta-da, an image of the member tote bag that is available if you decide to renew on site or purchase a gift membership with us. And I will add that tote bag was locally produced at Orchard Street Press. And you can actually read about the production of that on the museum's blog. There's a fun feature that sort of goes in depth with the owners of the press and just gives you a little bit more information about its creation. And also on the note of the Reginald Baylor member mug, in your next member insights, there will be another blog feature that is an interview that I conducted with Reginald Baylor. So if you want to learn more about that or hear from him as an artist, stay tuned for that. And Amy, if you want to proceed, I think before we jump into Q&A, I just want to take a moment to pause and say, of course, all of these benefits are fun and wonderful and important, but we just want to emphasize that we see you and we see and appreciate your support and all that it makes possible for the Milwaukee Art Museum. Membership support in general supports the operations of the museum, everything from organizing and mounting exhibitions, caring for and conserving artwork, and frankly, keeping the lights on, keeping the wings in motion, all of these operational things that we certainly don't take for granted. So thank you so much to all of you. And I just wanted to say, in particular, in the last year, highlight a couple of pieces that you've been able to make possible for the museum. So as Rachel mentioned, we are accelerating on our strategic direction, and a big part of that is the hiring of a new senior leader at the museum, Dr. Quintera Souffrant, who is the museum's inaugural curator of community dialogue. And again, I will direct you to the museum blog. I had the chance to speak with her and another brand new senior leader to the museum's senior leadership team, Rob Stein, about their vision for the museum's future. So I would love for all of you to take a look at that when you have a moment. So as Rachel mentioned, we've really had to focus on pivoting with the 2 extended closures that the museum was subject to this year, pivoting to the virtual space and virtual mediums. But we're so pleased that 145,936 people engaged with the museum's virtual programs, activities, and events through online platforms in the last year. When we were able to be open for the 2 windows of time, during this crazy year. We welcomed 23,000 visitors who were able to come safely through our doors from July through mid to late November in 2020. And then lastly, our education team was able to disseminate 125 art packs with art materials to local youth in Milwaukee through social service organizations so that they could participate in art programs, both created by the museum, but also just explore their own creativity at home. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much again to all of you. We're so grateful for your support, and we're happy to field any questions you might have.
Yes, and I just want to say thank you so much, Elizabeth and Amy, for your wonderful presentations today. And just as we give everybody a minute to think about any questions that you might have, just a reminder to put those into the chat, or if you want to come off mute and ask on camera, that's great too. So we'll just kind of take a moment here to see if there are any. I know that was a lot of information, so sometimes too what happens is after these programs you might think of something that you want to ask, and that's great too. One of the ways that we are able to stay in touch with our members is we do have a dedicated member phone line and also a dedicated member email address. So if there's ever anything that pops up that you want to know more about, or we can help you with something, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Those numbers and that email address are pretty much everywhere you might receive anything about membership. So I don't see any hands. I don't see any questions in the chat. So unless there are any late breaking thoughts, I think we can bid you farewell. And again, I just want to reiterate on behalf of the entire Milwaukee Art Museum team, we are so grateful for you, our members. Happy Member Month. We're thrilled to celebrate you, and we very much look forward to seeing you in person at the museum this summer, and certainly for hopefully the Member Preview Day of Americans in Spain on June 10th. And just one update there, we will be sending an email tomorrow to you with all of the details for all those preview opportunities. You'll be able to learn more tomorrow as well. All right, well, thanks everybody.